Hello, everyone, and welcome to March 8th Field Tuning, March 8th, 2025 Field Tuning. This is your host, the girl who's going to pull the cards, Intrepid Bodies, here in the Broom Radio with a couple of other members of the Broom. Want to say welcome and thank you all for being here again, and thank you all to those who are tuning in on the podcast. If you would like to know where you can support containers like this, support the Broom Radio as a creative endeavor, or just kind of send some love for this reading, there are going to be details in this episode in the show notes. So if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts, all that information will be down below. I like to get that out of the way early so that I can just focus on the reading, focus on the vibe. So yeah, now that that's out of the way, hey y'all. I'm here. I'm going to be pulling cards for the month of March and just kind of forecasting, seeing if there's any bits of guidance or, yeah, I would say honestly advice that spirit may have for us, that your guides may come through. As soon as I said that, a card popped out. Your guides may offer, ancestors may offer through this channeled message. Let's see. I usually pull cards in 3 groups and kind of divide the divination in and of itself into 3 different groups. But for some reason, I feel like it's because it's Pisces season. And I was saying earlier how things just feel like an undifferentiated soup of energy for me right now. I'm going to kind of diverge from what I usually do, which is pulling those 3 groups and kind of just pull maybe one big spread with some clarifiers, maybe open up the container to ask more pointed questions, and just kind of flow, honestly, in the spirit of Pisces season. So I hope that that's okay. And yeah, so I'm going to start with just pulling some cards. I'm working with the Goddess Tarot here, which has been kind of the deck I've been using for the last couple of months. And I'm also using the Beyond Lumeria Oracle deck by Izzy Ivy, which is also an Oracle deck that I've been using the last couple of months as well. So let's dive in and see. Spirit, for the month of March and for Pisces season, what can you share with us to guide us, that will reflect our circumstances back to us, and yes, provide sustenance for our souls, for our spirits? What energetic themes can we look out for, pay attention to for the month of March and for Pisces season? What's important for us to know? I'm just kind of shuffling the cards. There are a few that have come out already, but I'm just going to keep shuffling until I feel called to stop. Any other card, Spirit? Okay, I'll pause there. And I'll start with sharing the cards that I've already pulled with you all. So I'll read them out as I take photos of the cards. The first card that came out is the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords. The next card out is the Princess of Cups. Princess of Cups. Card after that is the Five of Swords. Card after that is the Five of Staves. And the last card is the Strength card, represented by Oya. So let me share these cards in the chat with you all. And I'll read them out again for those who are listening on the podcast. We have the Two of Swords, the Princess of Cups, the Five of Swords, the Six of Staves or Wands, for those of you all who are used to working with other decks. And lastly, the Strength card, represented by Oya. It's a pretty interesting spread. Wow. Instant downloads as I look at these cards, which is pretty, it's usually not how it happens for me. So I feel like with these cards, Spirit is being very obvious right now. So I'm definitely going to pull some clarifiers, definitely going to pull some other cards. But the first thing that I want to say is that the Two of Swords, the Princess of Cups, and the Five of Swords, just starting with those three cards, speaks to a theme for me that may come up for us in the month of March, may have already been presenting itself. I'm going to roll my windows up because I'm back in the States. I'm by the airport again. Planes are very loud. So anyways, the Two of Swords, Princess of Cups, Five of Swords instantly gives me this pastiche. It's not necessarily like a download of what anybody should do, but what I'm getting is this sense, this intuitive sense, and the feeling sense of walking into something or a situation blindly. And when you walk into that situation, whether it's into a room for an interview, whether it's into like a date, whether it's to a difficult conversation with somebody you know, sometimes we, as humans do, as people with monkey minds do, we tend to rehearse or tend to practice how we're going to respond to people and how we're going to respond to these situations because, number one, these situations are novel. Number two, these situations may bring out a side of us and we were talking about this a little bit before I press record, these circumstances and these scenarios may bring out parts of ourselves that we haven't been exposed to before. But like Spirit is saying, instead of rehearsing, why don't we walk into circumstances like the Princess of Cups, like filled with our own innocence, filled with our own like trust in the divine, which usually does look like innocence and not rehearsing and not preparing for the worst or the best, kind of occupying this. When I think of innocence, I think about embodying this state of like divine neutrality, like in the heart, right? So like not expecting things to go the ways that you are used to them going because the circumstance in and of itself is novel, right? So it's important to note like the circumstances that I was talking about, like a date or a job interview. These are circumstances where people have or are getting a quote unquote first impression of you. And so Spirit is almost like, what if we treated all our situations in that way? And what if we treated our situations and walked into them with, I know this is kind of hard to say because Pisces season has probably been bringing up a lot of stuff for a lot of people, but like, what if we did walk into circumstances with our heart on our sleeves? And what does that mean? Is like, how do we walk into circumstances? What comes up for me is like, how do we walk into circumstances without the emotional baggage of our past? And that's hard because I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I honestly don't know how to walk in circumstances with without the emotional baggage of my past. And when I say emotional baggage, that mostly comes from the Five of Swords. Is instantly kind of like what I get. from that card. And again, just these 3 cards together is almost like spirit asking us, like, what if we did walk into circumstances, not naive, not green, not acting like nothing bad could ever happen, or that we're above reproach, or that we're above being rejected. But it's like, just as much energy and mental energy and capacity as we spend on our what ifs of like what could go wrong, we could sometimes spend just as much energy on like what could go right. And sometimes when I do that, I find that I actually like kind of help myself like neutralize the charge a little bit in my field around like what I want to happen or what my expected outcomes are, so that I can kind of walk into circumstances just a little bit more open, a little bit more unburdened in my heart space with how a circumstance works out. And for some reason, I'm thinking about a job interview right now, but this could also work for like, again, like meeting somebody for the first time, right? It's like you really don't know how surprised you can be, or how quote unquote right things can go for you whenever you are tapped into a sense of openness and can manage to walk into a new threshold, a new beginning, a new circumstance without the energetic, and I'm speaking metaphysically, right? Like the energetic cloudiness of the past. So yeah, that's kind of how I want to channel that message with the 2 of Swords, the Princess of Cups, and the 5 of Swords. And the back of house work is also what I want to kind of talk about, of what comes, like how to get to that place of like neutralizing your own, the charges that are coming off of your own field. This is not about like completely like flattening your affect or completely flattening your expression or acting as if you're never going to have expectations to go a particular way. But specifically with the Princess of Cups, like this Princess of Cups represents, not only in this deck, but just to me and intuitively in this moment, represents this innocence and this sense of, it's like 2 things. It's like innocence, but also this sense of fullness, because as you can see, she's drinking from her own cup. And so the back of house work that goes into being able to perform this kind of like alchemy has to do with that, like filling your own cup first. So that whenever circumstances either go awry or go in the right way, either way that those circumstances turn out, you're good. And I don't say that as a defense mechanism. I say that in like a very like real and tangible way. So for the example of a job interview, something that a lot of like my mentors told me growing up, and just even my parents told me, they're like, don't ever just like put all your eggs in one basket. Like when it comes to work, when it comes to making money, when it comes to how you're going to take care of yourself, and I would talk to my parents a lot before job interviews, and I would get like really nervous or like really like shaken up. I'm like, what if I don't get this job? Well, my mom's like, don't let that be the only job you're applying to, which sounds like simple in theory, but like I kind of get what she means. It's like, don't, make sure you're taken care of on the front end and back end is kind of what I'm getting at. And I feel like what my mom was getting at in those moments. But I truly feel that way, even when it comes to job interviews, even when it comes to like dates, like, I mean, it's hard to receive another person or circumstance as it is if you're hinging everything that you need in your life on this one thing. It's also puts a burden on the circumstance before it even plays out. So that's what I feel like the Princess of Cups is reflecting back to us in this month of March, when you have opportunities to show up, whether it's in novel circumstances, whether it's in circumstances that are tried and true, try to do so without the emotional baggage of the past. And if you're finding it hard to do that, pour back into yourself a little bit more, give yourself space and time. And if it aligns, of course, to create that distance from those moments in the past that may still be weighing on your heart. And sometimes that does rest in self-care. Sometimes that rests in more rest, because we do have to create those like cognitive spaces where we know we're not in those circumstances anymore, so that the reality of being able to fill our own cup feels tangible, feels real, feels like it's creating affect in our lives, whether it's to bring us closer to outcomes that we truly desire, or if it's just to have a reprieve from the weight of the past. I feel like that's kind of the elixir of self-care. And that's kind of what Spirit wants to emphasize in this moment, is that it can actually create, self-care can create containers where, again, yeah, the thoughts, the ideas, the emotional baggage of the past are not in your personal container. And it's really just you and you and the divine, you and your ancestors, collaborating with one another. Um, to forge either new paths, new outcomes, or just to just heal, simply said. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. These three cards, I'm not sure if I would even read these three cards in that way usually, but it feels important to, yeah, let that channeled message come through. Um, okay, let's see what the rest of the cards say. um, excuse me. Well, I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee first and then read the chat. Got some hard relate, got some ashe in the chat. Thank y'all. This job or that job, why not both? Yep. This girl or that girl, this guy or that guy. Why not both? Why not all? Yeah, I feel like it's also too, like, kind of spirits coming through and really expressing in a subtle way that I guess these cards represent a way for us to kind of widen our imaginary capacity, our ability to like imagine ourselves in different circumstances. And that can be really challenging when there isn't space, or like you don't have space within yourself to like heal or to transmute or to look back and forward in time. And like some of the best ways to do these things are like in meditative practices, right? It's no secret. But at the same time, I feel like our ability to kind of create new possibilities usually has to do with how much space we have within ourselves, which usually has to do with how much healing we have access to or have a propensity towards. And I feel like because March and like Pisces season, there's so many like different associations with Pisces season, but to me, I always instantly, when I think of Pisces season, I think of cosmic soup. And I feel like Spirit is like, use this time wisely of being in a cosmic soup, of like, if you're remembering what happened when you were like 3 years old and then simultaneously thinking about your future when you turn 45, like take advantage of that. Like, you, from a metaphysical perspective, to me, I'm like, you have access to timelines right now. Like, get to work. And I feel like that's what Spirit is saying, is like, get to work, use your imaginary, meditative, alchemical capacities right now to like weave a new timeline for yourself that doesn't leave any part of you behind, right? And so even when I talk about emotional baggage, even when I talk about like the weight of the past, it's not to dismiss the past. It's like, those are possibilities. Those are things that you've been exposed to, and they're truths in your field. And so use those truths to springboard into an experience of different truths. And I feel like field tuning always kind of toes the line between like a divination and then like a masterclass and like timeline jumping. But basically, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, definitely. It's like the reason that we work to get whole, and the reason that we do work to kind of create a whole picture of ourselves in our own mind, a lot of the times, at least for me, is so that I can actually take all those parts of myself moving forward, so that when I'm creating new possibilities and like trying out for a new job or like calling in that new partner that I wanted, it's like, because I want to take my whole self there, not just like one part of myself onto that new timeline. So I feel like, yeah, that's the caveat in this reading as well. It's like, this is how you timeline jump with your whole self, all the pixels of yourself with you. um, Not just like some of yourself, Because I think that's how people get into like self-sabotage or like imposter syndrome. And it's like because they're probably half-assing the work, half-assing the healing. I'm gonna just be honest. When I've even felt that way with myself, it's because I've half-assed the healing, half-assed the work. And I'm like, I feel like there's a part of me missing, or I feel like I shouldn't have this. It's because only one part of me is there with me, if that makes sense. So, yes. Yeah, stretch your capacities. Treat your ability to like connect to timelines as like an affect of like quantum computing within your own self. And yes, weave yourself into new possibilities. Yeah, if it feels aligned to, just saying, it's gonna be very ripe time to do so. So I definitely will be. So yeah, the next couple cards, or the next set of cards we have, excuse me, is the Six of Staves and the Oya card. So the Six of Staves in this particular deck um, represents like this figure who, just like looking at the card, is this figure who has 6 days with her. She is in a celebratory sort of trope. She is celebrating herself. She's being celebrated by her community. And this card kind of represents the fulfillment or the actualization of one's passion, one's drives, one's efforts in this material realm. And so the Six of Staves card usually comes out whenever there is a desire to be celebrated, or sometimes I look at it as like a card that reflects our ancestors or the ancestral realm sort of smiling down at us, or kind of viewing our experience as sort of a component that represents the healing for a particular lineage, if that makes sense. So I'm going to read what the Six of Staves says in the booklet. Maybe that'll give us a clearer picture, or just kind of better translate what I'm trying to say. But it's definitely a card of celebration and fulfillment to me. But I'm going to read it. So it says the Six of Staves, crowned with the laurels of victory, the woman rides a pure white horse. 6 staves surrounding her the 6 staves surrounding her are raised in tribute to her success and courage. The meaning of this card is victory, acknowledgement, and honor. So yes, this is a card that represents when we've done the work, when we've put in the legwork, when we have been following not only our intuition, but we've been part and parcel of guiding ourselves into outcomes that serve our higher purpose. The Six of Staves quite literally represents victory and the culmination of our wills. And again, to me, it has that ancestral edge to it as well, because I don't know, to me, it just kind of represents, and in this moment, it feels like Spirit wants me to emphasize the fact that it can mean victory in like an ancestral way as well, or victory in the ancestral realm. So there's part of me that's like, okay, if your lineage has been kind of like dealing, I'm gonna get kind of woo, but that's okay. If your lineage has been dealing with issues, I'm gonna just say it, shielding curses, things that have like plagued your lineage for a while, and you have felt called to untangle those knots in your um ancestral lineage, then this card represents victory in the month of March and in Pisces season when it comes to undoing those threads that have plagued your ancestry for a long time. So, in other words, if you have a more ancestrally coded sort of mission, or feel like your path is very well informed and boosted by your ancestors, some of these ancestors in here, like, you're doing good, keep going, like, please don't stop cooking. It's kind of how I just want to like translate it. So but on the other hand, I feel like for those of us who may feel called to like read this card in a different way, I feel like in general it just might be kind of pointing to the month of March relating to a sense of personal victory, feeling like you've overcome some of the challenges that you have been sort of working through. The year is short, the year just begun, but I do want to say like the year. Or that victory is on the horizon. So if you've been kind of toiling or kind of making strides towards a particular goal or outcome, then victory is close. So this card is also, I feel like it's y'all's ancestors are in here. Please disagree, but they're like, keep going. If you feel like giving up, don't. Keep going. And with this card being followed up by Oya, which is the strength card, I'm going to read what Oya is about. I mean, she has a long history. This book could not just capture it. But I feel like the reason why this strength card is coming directly after the Six of Staves represents either it's reflecting back the strength that you've embodied so far, or represents the strength that you're going to need moving forward to do the kind of work that we were talking about earlier, which is like reweaving timelines, scanning through your ancestry, becoming aware of like different ancestral, like I'll just call it karma. And as you reweave these things or just become aware of these things before you even start the reweaving process, it feels like Spirit wants you to know that it's going to take a lot of strength of heart, strength of mind, strength of like spiritual strength, mental strength, all the strength that you can think of. It's going to take that to actually create the changes that we want to see in our lives. Whether it is kind of learning how to move without the baggage of the past, whether it's learning to accept the victories that we have in our ancestry, learning how to move into situations with more innocence and just kind of expecting the best. That takes strength. All of that work takes strength to do. We don't just wake up and become these like master alchemists. I mean, I didn't, so I don't know if y'all have. That's cool if you guys have, but I haven't. It's taken quite a lot of work. It's taken quite a lot of applied application of like myself, putting myself in circumstances that are seemingly a little scary. Facing people, having conversations that are incredibly tough. I'm thinking about tough conversations because I'm like, I'll be honest with y'all, there's a couple tough conversations I need to have right now. I'm not avoiding them, but I'm just kind of feeling into the right time to have them and asking myself, am I strong enough to have these conversations right now? So I feel like that's kind of what the presence of Oya wants to kind of emphasize and just kind of say in this reading. If I could give Oya a voice, it would be that, is to gather all of your bearings, because this next chapter is going to ask a lot of you. And also keep in mind that you've kind of been praying for this, so don't feel so windswept when this change comes, when this change is afoot, because you pray for it. You've asked for it. You've been part of the, I guess, like capitulation of this new timeline. So I know that's something my guides tell me often. They're like, why are you so surprised when you've been working so hard for a different outcome to certain things in life? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just human. I don't know. It's funny because the t-shirt I'm wearing right now says humanity. And I'm like, yeah, feels aligned to how I'm feeling right now, where I'm like, these are all things that I'm talking about are very real parts of, I think, being human and our process of humaning. And I also feel like Spirit's like, don't act like you don't have the support to get through this stuff either. So yeah, let's read what Oya is about. And maybe I'll post some clarifier cards. Maybe you guys have more specific questions, or yeah, and maybe I can post some more cards before I close out this reading. So Oya, the Yoruba goddess of the Niger River, is considered a patroness of female leadership and strength. Because of this, women will often ask her for the right words to gain power. The meaning of this card: the strength to create peace between opposing forces. Ooh, I'm gonna read that again. The meaning of this card is the strength to create peace between opposing forces. These forces, oh my God, I was just about to say this. These forces may be inside of you, or personified in a situation. Tame them. You have the strength. Wow. I'm gonna let that breathe for a second. Tame them. You have the strength. I like honestly, I'm like speechless. I'm like, I don't even know what to add to that. That was so clear. Well, I guess what I will say, I always do that. I'm like, I'm speechless. I have nothing to say. Then I'm like, wow. Um, I guess what I will say is that I want to emphasize these two sentences: the fact that this card represents the strength to create peace between opposing forces. So, Oya in this example and in this divination represents a harmonizing force, right? Which is super interesting because in some reads, in just traditional reads of her energy, she actually represents the hurricane, like the hurricane, literally like the actual factual happenstance of a hurricane. And so when you think of a hurricane, it's kind of like this upswing of energy. But if you look at it on a like geological level, like a hurricane is quite literally the manifestation of like opposing energies. And so I think it's very just poetic in this moment. I'm kind of in awe in the fact that this card is, or this deck is kind of emphasizing this harmonizing power that Oya has and that she has had probably for centuries. And a lot of people, I'm sure, who pray to her and venerate to her can attest to that. Um, but it also says that these forces may be inside of you or personified in a situation. And I kind of want to emphasize that. I'm feeling called to emphasize that because it feels like it's the fact, Oya's strength, Oya's power, Oya's mighty sort of ability to harmonize these opposing forces can also be taken in on a more microcosmic level, where we can kind of not only petition her, but take this card and just think of strength in and of itself as an example of something we can take in on a microcosmic level and, use to support ourselves. And that when we have opposing energies, opposing narratives, opposing drives, opposing desires coming up and arising inside of us, that we can kind of call on this strength, this harmonizing strength, to create not only peace in ourselves, but peace in our environment. And I don't know why that's like, it's just giving me chills right now. I feel like, yeah, I feel like the reason why it's affecting me so deeply is like, I feel like that's probably been like my first sort of, I guess, brush with like the mystical and like with the divine and like human form has been in circumstances where other people or myself are called to bring peace into situations, and especially like relationships when there are like opposing energies. And every single time, not only that happens or I witness it happen or I do it within myself, again taking this macrocosmic expression of strength and sort of employing that in my own life, I'm just constantly floored at how this strength, this power of Oya, the power of harmonizing opposing principles has served me and has served other people. And I don't know, I just feel really touched by this message right now. And this kind of reminder from spirit that the strength that you need isn't brute strength. It's the kind of strength that can bring peace and harmony, not only to yourself, but to the circumstances that you're in, which is, again, yeah, when people think about strength and power, I think they think about it in traditionally like masculine ways. And those ways have been traditionally like destructive also, not only to the earth, but to people. This idea of like even having opposing views and trying to destroy the other person, I think comes from an old world paradigm. And I feel like this strength that we're kind of talking about, this sort of like feminine prowess that Oya embodies, is a different kind of strength. and I think the kind of strength that we're going to need moving forward. And I feel like Spirit's like, try that on for this month of March. For Pisces season, try to employ this harmonizing faculty if you can. You might need it. I'm just saying. I don't want to act like this month is going to be scary, but yeah, I feel like there's something here for whoever needs it. So I'll leave it at that for right now. But yeah. Let's see if there's any other cards, any other things that Spirit wants us to keep an eye out for. Spirit, anything else for the month of March and for Pisces season? I feel like the vibe is like become your own alchemist. Oh, right as I said that, the card that came out is Venus, who aptly represents love. And the card to kind of clarify is the Venus card, or the card that came out to clarify is the love card represented by Venus. I get the sense that this card kind of emphasizes self-love, but also this precipice of acting from love, like letting love be your epicenter. Allowing love to be the thing that motivates your desire for change this month. Allowing love to be the thing that drives you, whether it's love for yourself, for your community, for the divine, for life itself. Yeah, I kind of get the sense that this love that's coming out represents, the love of self on a very like deep and primordial level. Like loving yourself down to your cells is kind of what comes up. And I feel like, the opportunities might just be ripe for that as well. I know Venus is in retrograde, and without getting too much into that, I feel like whenever a planet is in retrograde, it's an opportunity to reflect more deeply on just the tropes, the beliefs, the narratives that we have around love, be it romantic love, be it self-love, be it the way that we love our community and our family, the way that we love the environment. As we reflect on those things, it's also a ripe time to, I feel like, review the motivations of these things. Check in with your definition of unconditional love. Oh, there's a lot coming up on that. Also check in with how you define accountability for those you love, how you keep your own self accountable to love. I could go on and on about how Venus and retrograde themes are going to be present in the next month or so, but I feel like y'all kind of already get the vibe around that. And so the next card that came out is the Nine of Cups. Excuse me. I'm going to read what the Nine of Cups out. Ooh. Okay, so the Nine of Cups reads, finally, satisfaction. A rainbow leads the woman to a banquet table set with 9 cups, worth waiting for. This feast will nurture many hearts and bodies. The meaning of this card is satisfaction, contentment. Some consider this the card the wish card, meaning a wish will be granted if it appears in a spread. Ooh. Yeah, I feel like this card directly connects to sort of what Spirit was emphasizing with the Venus card is, as we're in review, or just kind of this review, this cosmic review is happening in the background regarding Venus. It's important to just also take stock, kind of like I said, of the things that we deem appropriate and part of our sense of emotional fulfillment. I think I've channeled this before in other readings where it's like, okay, and I'll just emphasize it again, how like we might be praying for, wishing for, calling down, petitioning our ancestors and all of that for our own desires. And so often I mean, I won't say often, but sometimes just being that self-focused can make it very hard to think about and consider how our sense of wish fulfillment might affect the collectives and communities that we're a part of. And I'm saying like the healthy, thriving, generative communities that we're a part of, right? And so this isn't about thinking about how your new job will affect your ex from like 6 years ago, because that shit doesn't matter. I'll just be honest, it doesn't, unless, they're paying your bills. I don't know, but it's almost like Spirit wants to be very clear about how this is about thinking about how your sense of wish fulfillment, or reviewing or recapitulating how your sense of wish fulfillment is in line or is different from your community, and like kind of mending the bridge between those things. So if you have desires and wishes that are so adjunct from the circles that you're a part of, that's okay. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to change those desires. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to adjust so that you can fit more comfortably into the circles that you're a part of. But it also, on the other hand, I feel like it's important to say that wish fulfillment a lot of the times is does have to do with other people. And I just feel like that's important to say. Does have to do with the communities that, again, the healthy generative communities that we're a part of. And sometimes we're going to experience that wish fulfillment as a collective, might not be on an individual level. And so kind of just creating room for that. I feel like this month, especially with Venus being in retrograde, that is something that we can think about and something that we can consider. And as we consider these things, again, this is not about just radically changing our desires, but reviewing, reflecting on these desires from a more whole place, from a more whole lens, again, with our whole selves present. And that in and of itself can be the catalyst to bringing wish fulfillment to our doorstep. So, yeah, I'm like, is there anything else to say on that? Yeah, I feel like some of us may be hit with the realization that we should have been, or may have, we might feel like we should have been dreaming bigger like a long time ago. And I would say don't. That's kind of a waste of time. I mean, even though we're not in a time crunch on this lifetime, but I feel like beating yourself up on like, why didn't I think about this before? Or why didn't I think about like manifesting like this before? I mean, it is kind of a waste of time when you think about it, because you get the realization when you're supposed to. The openings happen when they're supposed to. And I think thinking like that is I think a again, no judgment, is a product of thinking about manifestation, and the metaphysical world is a very like linear sort of thing, and that's just not how that works, in my opinion. And so when we can let go of those sort of, I'll call them mental confines. Y'all can shoot me later. I don't care. But those mental confines, when we let go of those mental confines, we can see how things like wish fulfillment, things like new timelines, things like just like almost like instant manifestation, or like right over the horizon. But I feel like there's also part of us that has to, yeah, Spirit wants me to emphasize this, like break up with linearity in a way, in order to kind of invite more of this magic, this possibility into our lives. Some of that, sometimes that just starts with like not ruminating so much. I know it's very hard to do, but we are, I mean, at least here in the West, we're moving from a more wintry sort of kind of season into spring. And so, if the flowers are blooming, shouldn't you, give yourself room to bloom as well? Just saying. Um, and so that's bloom in all kind of ways, especially like mentally. Um, and that, yeah, that can look like kind of breaking up, maybe just for Pisces season, who knows, maybe we can break up with linearity in a very like low risk kind of way, just to see if there's room to create more magic in our lives, call in more magic, become a steward of more magic in our lives, and just seeing what happens, yeah, kind of curious if anybody has, I don't want to say questions, but like if there's any like lingering vibes in the air. I'm going to shuffle this oracle deck. It's kind of big, so it usually takes me a while to shuffle this anyway, but I just want to hold a little bit of space before I pull the oracle card. I'm being called to look up what sign the moon is in right now, like as I do this reading. So if you're listening to this on the playback, the moon might be in a different sign, but I want to look it up right now. Oh, what sign is... No way, the moon is in Gemini? Love that. I love that because that's my natal moon, but I'm kind of feeling that right now. Yeah, I'm not sure why I was called to look it up. Again, the moon might be different if you're listening to the playback at a different time, but just, yeah, wanted to drop that lore in the chat while I shuffle this oracle deck. Spirit, do you have any oracle cards that may help round out this reading for the month of March and Pisces season? Any words of wisdom, closing guidance for this reading, for this group? Boom, there we go. Okay. So the oracle card that came out is communication, co-creation. I adore this card. Just the vision, how it looks, the way that it's illustrated, it's gorgeous. Well, hello there, neighbor. Okay. I'm going to read what this card is about. This card represents nonverbal communication, love language, telepathy, unique ways of communication, light language, multidimensional information, community, coexistence, relationships, meeting our higher selves, really quote, seeing someone, and deeper listening. Okay, let's see. The divinatory meaning of this card is, how are you communicating beyond words? Perhaps you are being misunderstood because there is a dissonance between your words, actions, and behavior and what you mean to communicate. Words are like spells, so be conscious of what you say, as you may be verbally sabotaging your intended meaning. Also, be reminded that words can mean different things to different people. Something may be getting lost in translation. An issue may be cleared through improved communication. Listen carefully to what someone has to say without interruption. Furthermore, it may feel scary to share vulnerable truths, but this may be the only way forward. This card encourages greater exploration in the realms of telepathy, healing, and the arts, such as poetry, painting, and music, where there is collective communication beyond the mind. Hmm. Hmm. It's in, there's a paragraph in the interpretation of this card that has to do with downloads, and I feel like I'm getting hit with quite a bit, like a handful of downloads. I'm trying to synthesize the downloads in a way that sort of honor the reading too. Um, but it might just be an aside, like what I have to say and what's coming up, which is okay. Um, but I feel like it does kind of relate to the last bit of what I was saying about inviting more magic, more awe, less linearity into our lives. And I'm not sure how many of us listening feel, I mean, this is a divination for God's sakes, but I just kind of feel like saying this disclaimer that, like, I'm not sure how comfortable all of us feel with the sense of like being connected to or actively connecting to other realms, or how how comfortable we are with that being part of the metaphysical reality. um but it feels like that's kind of what's coming through right now, is like this reminder from spirit that like you're hardly ever alone, like by yourself. That we're kind of, this really relates to like the cosmic soup vibe that I've been feeling since the moment I opened up this container, which is like this acknowledgement and this respect that we're connected to different realms, different timelines, whether it's like ancestors, whether it's celestials, whether it's deities that we worship or participate or collaborate with. Um, and also this addendum that like there is telepathy happening across time and space, whether or not we're consciously like aware of it. And this isn't about like getting better at telepathy or like trying to convince you that telepathy, this is just how I feel. But it feels like, yeah, the kind of message behind the message of this card is like, yeah, just a reminder that the, I guess, like the desire to like access or connect, or this drive to like connect to um what is celestial, what is ephemeral, what is divine, is not that far fetched, you know? There are some people who feel called, and there have been times in my life where I feel called to create very clear channels of communication, whether it's through altars, whether it's through ritual work, whether it's through invocation, whether it's through prayers that kind of open up these access points to other realms in very like tried and true ways in my lineage. And there are just some times where I'm just in the kitchen or walking and I just am humming, and I feel like it's a very low stakes, more casual way to address and acknowledge and again open up the container to other realms. Um Sometimes people can connect to other realms through their dreams. They connect to other realms very easily through their sleep and their dream world. Some people connect to through other realms in body work and in movements. Some people connect to other realms through sex and tantra, whether it's self tantra with another person. Hey, get it? But I just want to emphasize that there's so many ways that, and so many traditions that have sort of primed and greased the trails for us to connect across time and space, not only with each other, but again, across realms, other timelines, other beings, to particular ancestors, to particular ancestral timelines. And so it can get very, very, nuanced, and it can also be just like as vast as like having a daily prayer practice to connect with one deity, right? But again, I feel like Spirit wants me to emphasize that in this month, something about the temperature, something about the cosmic season that we're in right now is just, yeah, there's something in me that wants to emphasize that the veil, I guess, I mean, a lot of people say this, but I'm just going to say it. The veils are very thin. They might be particularly thinner for other people, which also might be why we have this sense of things coming up, whether it's memories from the past, these random, quote unquote, unforeseen desires, quote unquote. These things all might be bleed overs from our connection with other realms, other celestials. Again, depending on how comfortable you are with that. But I feel like for me, as somebody who's very comfortable with that, I expect that. Usually when there's like even a transit or, a particular planet going in retrograde, like for me, there's something deeply primal in me that's like aware that that means that for me, the vows and the way that I connect to these other realms might change, might be different. So I'm just kind of offering that nugget of wisdom as a perspective shift or a different way for us to look at not only transits, but even the like even new seasons, like whether it's a new month or a new like zodiacal season. I don't know, try that on for size if it feels aligned to, like maybe think of Pisces season as a time where, yeah, the energies are heightened, your spiritual sight is heightened, that your access points are a little bit more wider, so yeah, I feel like that's kind of what's coming through for me around this oracle card as a way to kind of also wrap up this reading, is that I don't want to leave anyone feeling like March or Pisces season is anything to be afraid of. If anything, if you're mystically inclined, this might be a very good, fun, and ripe season for you, because you might just be hopping all the way throughout the realms. I don't know. I've seen many people in the astrals the last week or so. So I'm like, maybe some of y'all are already doing it. I don't know. But yes, there is a part of me that just kind of wants to wrap up this reading saying that there's nothing to fear, that there is a lot of ripe opportunities, even if it's, again, just within our inner world, for us to create change, even if it's just a change in, I'm going to borrow a word from Severance, our tempers, then that's okay too. Great change starts within, in my opinion. So have at it and have fun. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you would like to support Field Tuning and other containers like it, all the ways to do that will be in the episode details and the show notes. For those of you guys who are here live, I just want to say thank you for contributing to the container. And I hope that you guys have a good Pisces season. I'll see you all at the end of Pisces season. The next iteration of Field Tuning will also be in the show notes. And so, yeah, I'll be back towards the end of the month for us to kind of close out the month of Pisces and to like reflect on some of these themes if it feels aligned to, or to forecast the next month, who knows. But I'll see you all then. And yeah, have a great weekend. Take care.